Hridayananda Swami Prabhupada. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada. Ram Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivraj Acharya Stotra Prasada Sri Srimad Bhakti-Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Anantagoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kado Sri Krishna Chaitanya Nanda Vaita Gadadhar Sivas Adi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Swami Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories of the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanandi. Hare Krishna. Thank you all for listening, those who are here in Atlanta, and all of you who are in other places, superficially, because actually spiritually we're all in the same place, at the lotus feet of Prabhupada Krishna. I'd like to especially thank my dear godbrother, Balabhadra Acharya, for giving us just a sample of his very famous bhajans and kirtans. A lifelong devotee of Prabhupada's mission. So, we're all set? So I've been asked to speak today on the topic of Krishna and Balaram. And of course, great sages, acharyas have been talking about this for, well, actually forever. So I will speak on one aspect of this topic which I personally find very interesting and also extremely important for a correct understanding of our philosophy, which we should not take for granted. Especially because the topic I'm going to speak on now is something that Prabhupada does talk about, but perhaps not quite in the way I want to. And that's what Prabhupada said, actually. Balabhadra Parampara, you remember this? Where Prabhupada said that if you speak on the Bhagavatam every day, there will always be new lights. And so hopefully I'm not dragging a shadow across our theology, but actually bringing the light. So my initial assumption about our philosophy in approaching this topic, Krishna and Balaram, is that we are actually monotheists. We actually know that there is ultimately one God. I was not born into explicitly Vaishnava culture. On the other hand, I was not born into also a Trinitarian culture, which I think is not exactly monotheism. I was born into a tradition which really, really emphasized monotheism. There's one God. And of course, we have a loving relationship with that God, but still there's one God. We have an interesting, actually fascinating, unique phenomenon in Krishna, or in the descriptions of Krishna in authorized books, namely that he expands himself into many other forms. And this topic you could call Avatara theology. So in Sanskrit terms, they would say that what we're doing now is Avatara Vichara, which means investigation into that. In fact, in the second stanza of that beautiful and famous song, the Six Goswamis, it said, Nana Shastra Charanaika Nipano. Yeah, Samsa Dharma Samstapako. So, Nana means many. varieties. So Nana Shastra Vichara, in the analysis, which is Vichara, the analysis or the investigation of many Shastras, the six Goswamis were Nana Shastra Vichara Naika Nipuno. They were Eka Nipuna. Actually, it's Vichara here. The Vichara or Vichara is the same word. Grammatical details, but it means the same thing. So, Eka in Sanskrit means one. Eka means one, but it's also used to mean unique or singular. So, and Nipuna, of course, means expert. So, Eka Nipunao, and the ending Nipunao is because the song is written in a dual case. In Sanskrit, in most languages, there's a singular or plural, like the book, the books, or in Spanish, el libro, most libros. However, in Sanskrit, as well as in, I believe, ancient Greek, perhaps Latin, there's the singular, and then there's a dual form and the plural. So the song of the six Goswamis is very beautiful. All those words ending in AU. Bhate Rupa Sanatano, Raghu Yugal, Sujita Gopalakau. The reason you have all these words ending in AU, which is an unusual composition, is because the author, Srinivasa Acharya, in something which is very, what's the word? Kind of like different and interesting from a literary point of view. He has divided the six it's really a unique combination. So one day Rupa Sanatana means Rupa Sanatana, like the two of them. And then the next pair is Rupa Sanatana Raghu Yugal, which means the pair, literally means the Raghu pair. Raghu Yugal. It's interesting because you know the word yoga means to link, and with the same root you have yuga, which means a pair, like two things are linked. So Raghu Yugal, Sri Jiva Gopala. And of course, Gopala, Bhatta Goswami was the youngest, and therefore the author writes Sri Jiva and Little Gopal. That's what it means. Gopala, and then in many languages there's sort of a diminutive form, like in Spanish, if you were saying Little Gopal in Spanish, it would be Gopalito. So in Sanskrit, it's Gopalako. So Sri Jiva and Little Gopal was the youngest. Anyway, so in the second stanza of the song, Nana Shastra, varieties of Shastras, many Shastras, Vicharana, in the analysis and study, investigation of varieties of Shastras, the six Goswamis were Eka Nipuna, they were singular experts. Singular experts. And their purpose was Sadharma Sanskapaka. They were establishing Sadharma, eternal principles of life. We can say religious principles, but just eternal principles of life. And anyway, if you can stand it, I'll explain a little more. Sanskapaka, I found this very interesting. So, Sam means together, as in Sankirtan. So Sankirtan literally means together kirtan with other people. And stop it. Therefore, it also means do something very well or completely. It also means like fully, completely. And ska, we have in English still, hasn't changed in Sanskrit. Words like stand, status, and so on. And stapaka, the P means making something stand. Making something stand, in other words, establishing. Establishing. It's a style is there for establishing. So Sanstapako, in other words, these are the people, the Goswamis, who made the Sadharma, the eternal spiritual principles, made them stand, in other words, establish them. And in pursuit of that goal, they were singular experts of Shastra. So here I am, meanwhile back on Bhuloka. I'm going to try to explain the fact that Krishna expands himself into many forms. The first being Balaram, of course, there's Vasudeva, Pradyumna, Sankara, Niruddha, and so on. Untitled Chapter, Vyuma, literally like the fourfold formation, and so on. And so the point I want to make, just to get to the conclusion, is that there is one God. And therefore, even though Krishna perfectly plays the part of another person, Balaram, actually Balaram is Krishna. There's one God. And that is stated very clearly in the Brahma Samhita, which Lord Chaitanya himself brought back to the Vaishnava community. He found this book. I mean, he obviously put it there so you could find it. But he found this book in South India, in Rameshwaram, and then he brought it back. And so one of the verses there is about Krishna, about Govindam. Advaitam, that's literally not two, non-dual. Advaitam, Achyutam, Krishna, Govinda is infallible. Advaitam, Achyutam, Anadi, he has no origin, he's the origin of everything. And here's the part that is especially pertinent. Ananta Rupa. Anta in Sanskrit we still have in English, almost the same word as end. So Ananta means endless, or limitless, or infinite. So Krishna has endless, limitless, infinite forms. Rupam, Ananta Rupam. And yet, all those forms are Advaita. There's only one God. There's only one God. And that's the message we get very clearly in Bhagavad Gita, that there's one God. Krishna shows, in fact, different forms to Arjuna. He shows him the universal form. And finally, when Arjuna recovers from seeing the universal form, then at Arjuna's request, Krishna shows him the four-armed form of Narayana, and then again, Krishna. So, I often think of Krishna Balaram as kind of God using the technique of good cop, bad cop. Very, very well-known criminology technique, good cop, bad cop. So that, for example, Krishna took a very strong position against Duryodhan and his corrupt government. And Balaram tried to befriend him. People often ask, why did Balaram befriend Duryodhana? And I think for several reasons. They're obvious. One is that Balaram was giving him a chance to rectify himself. And Krishna, through his form as Balaram, was also establishing a principle which is stated often in the Bhagavatam. It's often stated in the Bhagavatam. And that is that the principle is that Krishna is actually equal to everyone, despite the appearance that he favors the devas over the asuras. So because sometimes, unfortunately, there are people, even so-called Vaishnavas, who claim that Krishna, sort of whimsically, he has power and right of divine whimsy, so that by causeless mercy, which by the way is not a term found in any Shastra, that simply by causeless mercy, he just blesses someone who's no more deserving than a bunch of other people who are not blessed, and therefore going to suffer. As we know, if you as a parent treated your children this way, the government might take your children away from you. It would be considered actually criminal and morally reprehensible. If you severely punish one child and another child did exactly the same thing, okay, here's some candy for you. In other words, a parent that did this would really be an incompetent, morally deficient parent. And to attribute incompetence and moral deficiency to God is a big mistake. We find this tendency to sort of over-glorify, or to want to emphasize so much God's independence, he can do whatever he wants, that we attribute to him injustice and practically foolishness, which of course is not unjust and he's not foolish. The fact is that Krishna can do whatever he wants, but might doesn't make right. You could say that if there was a God who chose to do something unfair, simply because he's God and is all-powerful, is that unfair act fair? And the answer is no. Because mere power does not make injustice justice. That's called the law of the jungle. And Krishna does not govern by the law of the jungle. He governs, as explained in the Bhagavatam, by his infinite goodness. And therefore Krishna chooses, as he explains in Bhagavad Gita, he chooses freely to be fair. Therefore, we should not foolishly claim he's unfair just because we can't, by the wrong idea that we can't really establish that Krishna can do what he wants unless we claim that he does do something absurd just to prove that he can do what he wants. It's like saying that a parent, just to prove that the parent has authority over the child, that the parent throws the child off a cliff or something. Well, parents have to do that just to prove that they have authority over their children. So, the fact here is that Krishna chooses freely, as God, to do the right thing. And he says that very clearly in Bhagavad Gita, that he says, Samoham Sarva Bhuteshu. There's also another current among some people, devotees, who are imagining falsely that they have such an advanced understanding that they can discard the Bhagavad Gita. It's not a foolishness. And Krishna says very clearly in the Gita, Samoham, I'm equal. Sarva Bhuteshu, to all living beings. Nam me dveshyosti, I have no enmity to it. Could you please open and close that door very quietly, or use another door? You there. Yeah, please be very quiet because there's a lecture going on. Thank you. So, Krishna says, Name dvesha. Dvesha means envy or hatred. In other words, I don't hate anyone. I'm not against anyone. Name priya. And no one is my favorite. Didn't your parents tell you that? That we love all our. So how can God be morally inferior to just an ordinary good human parent? Now someone gives the answer, well, because he's God. Again, do people who have power need to show their power by doing something stupid? By doing something morally wrong? Just to show you that I can do it, just to show you that I'm the authority. So this kind of nonsense is sometimes preached, but it's not actually the case. So there's a type of vanity, there's a type of material pride where one wants to outdo other people in theology. But actually, we should just pay attention to what Krishna is actually saying in the Bhagavad Gita. So in that Bhagavad Gita, Krishna shows himself to be beforehand in Narayan. He's the same person. Arjuna doesn't say, I know there's another person that has 4 arms. Did you show him? He says, let me see your 4-headed form, just another form that you have. And we find, for example, that when Krishna left the Rasa dance, great disappointment with the gopis, and they were searching for him. They were running madly about trying to find Krishna. And Krishna thought, okay, let's see what happens. And so he just appeared as his 4-headed form. And the gopis came by and wanted to know, I mean, imagine this. Like the greatest yogis, the greatest philosophers, the greatest saints are trying for so many lives to catch even a tiny little glimpse of God. And here the gopis saw this form of Narayan, and they simply asked directions. Like, do you know which way Krishna? And then they looked at him and, wait a second. The gopis loved Krishna so much that just they looked at him, he actually couldn't hold his form. So he kind of talked back into his 200. So there you have it, right in Krishna Lila, you have it right in the Bhagavad Gita, that all these forms of Narayan, they're just Krishna. And since we know that the Narayan forms are expansions specifically of Balaram, how could Balaram be a different person, and yet his personal expansions are different than him? In other words, it just becomes a big mess. If you try to say there are 2 gods, or 3 or 18 or whatever, there's the good one. Because these Narayan forms expand from Balaram, yet Narayan is Krishna. Because in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna said, let me see your Narayan form. And Krishna changed into Narayan back to Krishna in front of the gopis. So if all the forms coming from Balaram are actually Krishna, guess who Balaram is? Yeah, so, I mean, how would I explain to my family that I gave up monotheism? So actually so there's one God. So Krishna and Balaram, Lord Balaram, he offered his friendship to Duryodhana for various reasons. One is to show the world that even if one of his children misbehaves, God still tries to help that person. And so Duryodhana ultimately rejected that offer, and therefore Balaram left. He did not fight the battle of Kurukshetra. And as I've explained, the Bhagavatam talks about this a lot. Only in our Hare Krishna temple. Literally. So it's what was I saying?
Balaram, Duryodhana, Balaram left after he couldn't get this Duryodhana.
Yes, so the Bhagavatam often mentions that Krishna is equal to everyone. And so he actually demonstrated this. And so as Balaram, Krishna did not take part in Kurukshetra, and yet he did as Krishna. So he illustrated both these theological points, that he's equal to everyone, but then also he reciprocates. Because the Pandavas wanted to, not simply to get Krishna's help as an ally, but the Pandavas wanted to serve Krishna. They wanted to do what Krishna wanted. And so therefore, because to be equal to everyone means to reciprocate. It means, for example, let's say you own a store and you have different products. Let's say you sell apples. Let's say the apples cost $1 each because they're organic. So if someone buys 2 apples, that's $2. If someone takes 3 apples, it's $3. You could say, well, I thought you treat all your customers fairly. You should charge everyone the same price, no matter how many apples they take. But that's not what it means. That's not what it means to treat everyone fairly. It means to reciprocate. You take 5 apples, it's $5. 1 apple is $1. And that's exactly what Krishna does. As you approach him, as you behave toward him, he reciprocates with you. Therefore, Krishna's favoring the Pandavas against the Kurus. He's just being fair. That is equality. That is equanimity. Whereas giving 2 equally deserving people completely different results, one of them goes to hell, one of them is saved by causeless mercy, that's not fair. That's not equality. Because Krishna's not doing, or wouldn't be doing, what he claims to do in the Gita, namely reciprocate with everyone. Jaijatamam prapadyante. So the example the Bhagavatam always addresses, namely that Krishna defended the Devas and defended the Pandavas and defeated the Asuras, the Bhagavatam repeatedly explains Krishna is being fair. He is being equal to everyone. The Bhagavatam doesn't even raise the point of giving liberation to one person and punishment to another person on the same level. The Bhagavatam doesn't even address that because only a fool could think that God would do that. The Bhagavatam is simply addressing serious points of view, not utter nonsense. Actually, in chapter 6 of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains why someone is drawn to the Hare Krishna movement. He says it's purvabhyasena tenaiva hriyate yavashodisa. It is by that person's purvabhyasa. In the Bhagavad Gita, you find the word abhyasa. In later Sanskrit, during Lord Chaitanya's time, the word is sadhana, spiritual practice. In the Gita, the word uses abhyasa, which means literally like repetition, so you practice it. So in purva, we still have in English the word previous, Sanskrit purva. So purvabhyasena, by previous practice, and Krishna says, tenaiva, by that alone. By previous practice and by that alone, hriyate, the person is carried, he indeed, avasha, almost involuntarily, to Krishna consciousness. And in another verse, that's in the same section, the verse right next to it, Krishna says that he talks about buddhim porvadehikam, labate buddhim porvadehikam, that someone who has practiced Krishna consciousness in the past then recovers that buddhi, that spiritual intelligence, which is porvadehika, which comes from the purvadeha, the previous body. So Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita does not mention the term Agyata Sukriti. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but the example of Agyata Sukriti is Ajamila. Ajamila. Now in the case of Ajamila, what we do not see is that someone got more than they deserved because he accidentally called out Narayan at the end of his life. That's not what the story is teaching. What the story is actually teaching is what Krishna explains in the Gita, Neha Vikramanashasti. Pratibhayo Nividite. In this Dharma, there's no loss or diminution. And whatever you once do is your eternal credit. Whatever you do for Krishna, he will keep in your spiritual bank account forever. Ajamila voluntarily, intentionally, consciously practiced Krishna consciousness. And he achieved an advanced level. Then he fell down, he was degraded. But at the end of his life, he chanted Narayan, or he didn't chant, he called Narayan his son. But that revived the Krishna consciousness, exactly what Krishna said. Purvabhyasena, by previous practice. Tenaiva, by that alone. And so Jamila was restored to a position he had earned by spiritual practice and given a chance to continue. If you look at all the verses in the Bhagavatam that say, for example, Tatak Sadyo Vimucheta Jadi Bheti Swayam Bhayam, in the first chapter, that simply by chanting Krishna's name, one can be liberated. What you'll find is that in those verses, the verb is not in the indicative case. It doesn't just mean, it doesn't say muchate, one is liberated. It says vimucheta, which means one may be liberated. One may be liberated, and of course that depends on one's spiritual credit. So Krishna goes to great lengths in the Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna and the Acharyas in Bhagavatam to explain that he is fair. I mean, maybe you could surrender to a God who is not even fair? Don't you remember what it's like for a child to have parents that are not fair? It's horrible. It's a horrible experience. If you're born in a family, which I hope none of you were, in which your parents are simply not fair, they just egregiously favor one child over another, it's practically abusive. Why would Krishna treat his own spiritual children abusively and whimsically liberate one, while another person, equally deserving or equally undeserving, is punished? So to attribute these ignorant, unjustifiable qualities to God is no service, even if one imagines that, no, I'm just trying to show how independent God is. You find this in Augustine, a philosopher who, did some things for which he's glorified and caused a lot of harm. You find it in Calvinism. It's a current in theology that comes up now and then by people who just are not thinking clearly. The idea that in order to show how free God is, we have to attribute to him reprehensible behavior. So anyway, Krishna, Balaram, by appearing in both these forms, gives Krishna flexibility, agility. Krishna is everywhere all the time, but in his pastimes, he can be in two places at one time. And he has these different forms. So those are some of the statements I wanted to make about Krishna and Balaram. Now 30 questions. Yes, Balabhadraji.
You spoke very succinctly about people using logic regarding this sort of context. Isn't it true that logic itself has a limit to the human logic?
Yes.
So is it plausible that outside human logic, God operates in this way outside?
Very good question. Axel, could you come here and ask the question? Not that I want you. This is your chance. This kind of Lance has got talent. This is, again, my godbrother Balabhadra. He had a very interesting question. He's going to ask. Here, could you?
Maybe I should go on this.
Yeah.
More logical. More logical.
And we'll turn this around.
No problem, I get it. We're adjusting.
There you are.
See if my memory serves it well. So my question was to the point about logic.
Yeah.
That isn't it true that human logic has a limit? So can it be that God can operate outside the limits of human logic, where certain activities would fall into that realm outside of human logic?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oops. There I am. Okay, first point I want to make is that in our literature, in the Shastra, whenever logic is described as limited, it's practically always in the sense that by our mere human logic, we cannot understand the ultimate identity of God. And so, here, we are actually, or I am, repeating Krishna's own logic. Because Krishna says over and over again in the Gita that if you are really intelligent, you will see all living beings equal. Pandita samadarshana, samapsarveshu bhuteshu mad bhakti lavate param. So I'm not using my logic, I'm actually surrendering to Krishna's logic. And I'm taking Krishna's logic seriously. I'm believing what Krishna is telling me in Bhagavad Gita. And I'm trying to understand life by taking Krishna seriously. So, in fact, I'm going to turn this one around. Not on you, because I know you're If Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, as he does, Jai Jatamam Prapadyante, as people approach me, Tam, those people, Tataiva, precisely in that way, Vajamyam, I reciprocate. Now that's what Krishna states. If I believe what Krishna says, I'm not trying to subject Krishna to my human logic. I'm simply believing what he says. If you say that, well, Krishna says that, but he didn't really mean it, or he actually does something else, you are the one who are using your own, frankly, bizarre and absurd so-called logic to change what Krishna said. So therefore, I'm using logic given to me by Krishna, as opposed to trying to use a pseudo-logic to say that, well, we don't really follow Bhagavad Gita because we're too advanced for that. As soon as someone says, I'm too advanced for Bhagavad Gita, I see that person as, what should I say, very problematic. If someone claims to be advanced, and so advanced they're beyond Krishna's own words, and some people are so foolish they actually follow that person, then it's unfortunate. I don't think that I've transcended Bhagavad Gita. I love Bhagavad Gita, and I think whatever Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita is eternally true. Parampara, another senior Vaishnava who's rendered great service to Prabhupada's mission. Want to ask a question?
So it seems
Please come up to the isolation booth.
it seems to me that this idea of
This is Parampara Das, who is heroically maintaining with other great devotees, Murari Seva Farm.
Murari Seva Ki Jai. Shri Shri Nitai Gaurachandra Ki Jai.
He's also wearing a faded chin covering.
It seems to me this question of Krishna being equal to everyone is also tied to the perennial question of why does God do bad things to good people? Was a sort of a typical sort of a challenge or sort of a question about
so the problem of evil.
The problem of evil or theodicy, if you can maybe weave those together.
Weave. Yes, Krishna doesn't do bad things to good people. Everyone gets exactly what they deserve. We do not subscribe to the, frankly, hopelessly illogical idea. I mean, just that this is our first life, that God creates a soul, so this is your first life. That's just not true. The soul is not material, it's only material things that begin and end, not eternal things. That's why Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Nasato Vidyate Bhavo. For that which is temporary, there's no true existence, and now Bhavo Vidyate Sataha. For that which is truly eternal, there's no non-existence. Therefore, good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people. If someone is good in this life and something bad happens, it means there was a hiccup in the past life or in some past life. And, eventually Krishna, out of his mercy, delivers that reaction to the person so that person can go on toward perfection. The problem of evil theodicy is also called in philosophy from the Greek word theos, which means God, and dike, which means justice. Like, is there justice in God? And if God is just, why do we see so much injustice in a world which he ultimately controls? And the simple answer is that there is no injustice. I mean, there's human injustice, but behind that human injustice, there's a divine justice. And again, in Middle Eastern traditions, which do not understand that there's a soul completely separate from the body, and therefore think that, in thought that this life is our first life, it's really a problem. Now, it's very interesting. There was a famous philosopher who taught many years at the University of Notre Dame named Alan Plantinga. He was a very good philosopher, but he tried to give a defense, tried to show that there can be a God in terms of just, neutral philosophy, even though there's this injustice in the world. And his argument was that God allows some injustice in order to prevent a greater evil. And it's kind of like that example. Let's say, for example, there was a Harvard professor that gives this example that in the undergraduate philosophy classes. That let's say you're driving a train and you see that up ahead there's some people trapped on the track, and if you go straight ahead, you will kill all those people. However, there's another track that goes off from your track, and you actually can. You have the power to drive the train on the other track, which there's only one person, and but you'll kill that one person because the train is going too fast to stop. So do you kill the 5 people or the one person? Of course, most people think they'll kill the one person. So Plantinga gave an argument like that. God is allowing evil to prevent a greater evil. The greater evil would be to deprive us of free will. So that if we did not have the free will to do bad things, that would be a greater evil because it would destroy what it means to be a person. Now, and some atheists actually bought that, although from our point of view, there's a much stronger version of that argument. A stronger version of that argument would be that God does protect our free will because it would be a great evil to deprive us of free will, because then we wouldn't be persons. However, because there is reincarnation, therefore Krishna very brilliantly, this was very sophisticated math, he actually arranges so that people who he knows seriously intend to do bad things, he connects them to people who have seriously bad karma. And so therefore, rather than, the train conductor killing one person instead of 5, actually what happens is there's a magic brake on the Vaishnav train, and the conductor stops the train and no one gets killed. So Plantinga, of course, is operating within the kind of claustrophobic worldview of Christianity. This is our first life. But when you understand that we're eternal, we have many lives, then God prevents the evil of destroying free will, and yet does not need to allow injustice to do that. Yes.
In Canto 6 of the Srimad Bhagavatam,
Yes.
Indra does everything wrong, and yet Lord Vishnu supports Indra. He kills Vishnu, he offends his spiritual master, and yet when he's fighting Krsna.
Yes, Indra does in the 6th canto does a lot of bad things, and yet Krishna doesn't exactly protect him. First of all, in the case of Vishvarupa, there might have been a better way to handle that, but it's the fact that Vishvarupa was off empowering the bad guys. And that was a problem. The Asuras threaten the universe, the Devas are meant to protect the universe. And so the whole point of offering through Vedic sacrifice, I won't get into all the details here, but it actually empowers the person for whom the sacrifice is performed. So empowering Asuras is not a great idea. And Indra was punished for that. I mean, if you look at the Bhagavatam, Indra's always getting into trouble, and he suffers because.
Canto 7, Krishna Maharaj questions.
Yes.
The Lord Krishna is really fair or not.
Yes, in chapter 7, Parikshit questions whether Lord Krishna is really fair. Yeah, because that's the purpose of the Bhagavatam, to speak for us, to raise our questions, our doubts. And that's why the Bhagavatam is so brilliant. Yes.
You just mentioned a little earlier that Krishna tells that the way you approach him is
Yes.
important. So in this grasashram, this corporate life we have corporate ambitions to succeed. So what is your suggestion, guidance, how we should approach Krishna, but at the same time
Yes.
also fulfill our corporate goal? That's the first question.
Oh, let me repeat that and answer it, because otherwise we'll lose track here. Well, he asked that Krishna says to always think of him, and yet if one is engaged out in the world, corporate life, then how can you be Krishna conscious in that life? And of course, Krishna answers that. He says, Jet Karosh, whatever you do, Tat Kurusha Manarpana, make that an offering to me. So if you work in the corporate world, that obviously belongs to Krishna. I mean, they may not know it. But the buildings, the people, the assets, it's all Krishna's energy. And so you are working to advance your career. And actually, the more you advance your career, the better it is for Prabhupada's mission. I mean, because ISKCON desperately needs members who have some influences. You just have to remember who you are and what you're doing. It's like, let's say, I mean, when I was at Harvard doing my graduate work, and I would hear professors sometimes kind of ridicule things that I hold sacred, I just thought, well, you know, I'm going to achieve my goals here. And it worked. I got my degree, and I've been able to, travel around the world and try to explain things with a certain level of expertise, a certain level of credibility because of that. And so when I was at Harvard, I just thought, I'll get the last laugh. My professors were actually very nice. They were very kind to me and they were very helpful. But I thought that by getting this knowledge, I can not only go out there and just, blast away all the nonsense that non-devotees are saying, not just that, but also, I think it's really helped me to formulate for myself and for other thinking people, devotees, sort of a rational understanding of Krishna consciousness. So I think that has been at least as valuable that I've been able to understand my own life and Krishna and Prabhupada in a more reasonable way. That was actually Prabhupada's instruction to me. In 1969, in a totally unexpected and dramatic act, I moved into the Hare Krishna temple in Berkeley. I was 20 years old, and I would say not mature for my age. I think I was just 20 years old. You don't know how we were. And so I didn't know whether I had a scholarship at Berkeley. I was supposed to be a senior, but due to some sort of detours on the road, I was. So I wrote a letter to Prabhupada asking him whether I should stay in school or just drop out of school and do regular temple service. I was in the temple. Prabhupada wrote back to me and asked me to finish my education. He indicated that I needed a good education in order to present Krishna consciousness to other educated people. And of course, at the time, I was 20 years old and trying to become fixed in Krishna consciousness and deal with the, to be kind, highly agnostic worldview of UC Berkeley. I couldn't really do it, so I dropped out first, and I go back later. But ultimately, how can I present Krishna consciousness to intelligent, educated people in a reasonable, convincing way if I don't have a rational understanding myself? So some doubts appear in my mind, or they appear in the minds of others. There must be a reasonable explanation. My inspiration to take up this process was that it was a spiritual science. I was thrilled by that idea that I had discovered a spiritual science. I wasn't looking for a new religion. I already had one. My parents gave me a religion. Everyone was nice and worshiped God. I didn't need a religion. I needed a spiritual science. So, in the same way, if you're in the corporate world, Rupa and Sanatana were in the corporate world. They were. So, Prabhupada was in the corporate world. So that's real Krishna consciousness. To see Krishna in the temple is nice, but it doesn't make you a genius. Anyone who has a little spiritual intelligence can see that that's Krishna. See Krishna in the corporate world is actually an achievement. That shows real Krishna consciousness. That shows advancement. And so rather than lamenting because, the corporation you work for isn't a mandir, what the Bhagavatam explains is that it is a mandir. There's a verse in the Bhagavatam that says, Archayam eva, haraye, pujam jakshad haye hate. Literal, give you a very literal translation. Yeah, one who ihate undertakes puja, hara, unto Hari, the Lord, but archayam eva, only in the deity form. Archa is deity form. Won't go into etymology, which is actually quite interesting. But anyway, and then the word archayam means in the deity form. And so archayam eva, only in the deity form. Archayam eva, pujam shadhiya, archayam eva shadhiya, anyway, thinking of the meanings. But so one who undertakes to worship only in the deity form, and natad bhakteshu. Anyway, won't go to all the grammar. But you do not worship that deity, that same Hari, that same Krishna in the hearts of the devotees, natad bhakteshu chanyeshu, and in all other living beings. We come into the temple, we see the deity, to practice, so that when you walk out the door, you can see that same deity in the heart of every living being. This is practice for the world out there. And so, the Bhagavatam says, if you only see Krishna in this form, such a person is savakta, that devotee. Prakrita smrita. It's considered by authorities to be on the material platform. Because you think Krishna only exists in an external, visible form. So that's your challenge. That's your that will be your glory. See Krishna in the corporate world. He's everywhere. He's in every building, every office, every desk lamp, every secretary, every executive, every gopher. Krishna entirely pervades the corporate world. He's everywhere in the corporate world. And when you see that, then you come to a higher platform of Krishna consciousness.
Thank you. And my second related question was, how do you develop Krishna consciousness? For people that are a little lower plane, like me, who believe just chanting and reading, that's enough. It sounds mechanical at times.
Okay, how do we develop Krishna consciousness? Just by chanting and reading, that can be mechanical. Yes, but guess what? Hundreds, if not thousands of souls have left Krishna consciousness walking out the door of a temple. You know that, I mean, you can't count them, can you? So, being mechanical is not a problem just for those who are outside temples. It's a problem, sometimes it's more of a problem for those in the temples because they're seeing Krishna every day, they take Krishna for granted. Whereas you're not here every day, all day. Therefore, you come here something very special. So, the issue of being mechanical is like, for example, imagine a concert pianist that has played a particular piece maybe hundreds of times. And so it's a challenge to play the piece, not because, this pianist can literally play the piece with his or her eyes closed. That's the paradox of practice. Because when you practice something, you can do it with your eyes closed, but you can do it expertly, right? In a sense, that's what practice is. Like athletes, they train so that when something happens, they just automatically do the right thing. And so the challenge is to develop the expertise that comes with repetition without succumbing to the dullness that comes with repetition. Yeah, so to do that, you have to just basically, you have to be intelligent. You have to monitor yourself and you have to know what your goal is. If you see you're, slipping into this dull mechanical thing, just, pull yourself out of it. Hare Krishna. Yes.
On your response to Prabhu on regard to.
Oh, good. Yeah. Do we have Mike? Can you come over here?
Sorry, I'll speak a little louder.
Yes.
You were mentioning with regard to seeing Krishna in the corporate world and things like that. So I also work in the corporate world, but sometimes you see that many of these corporate companies are engaged in a lot of sinful activities. Even though we use some of the results that we get from the corporate world in service of Krishna, but for me at least on a regular basis, having followed the company for a while, it does prick me from time to time that many of these corporate companies are engaging in a lot of sinful activities, both to other living beings
Yes.
and other humans as well.
Okay, let me repeat that. The question is that in the corporate world, the corporate world engages in sinful activities and activities that are just harmful to people, to animals, to the environment. Yeah, it's very hard to do it. For example, we all have to pay taxes. Some of your tax money is going to things that you really are morally opposed to. And to parse your tax dollar, okay, I'll pay my taxes, but none of this can go to subsidize beef farmers, and none of this can go to, bail out companies that pollute the environment or something. It's just, Krishna says in the Gita, Tasmata pari haryarthi natam shochi tumarsasi. Do not lament for things beyond your control. For example, Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami working for a Muslim governor. And it is very likely that governor was sometimes killing people. So, to completely avoid plastic, actually there was one devotee in the Avatar, it's a very nice devotee family working through Tennessee, and she has a big bag, and all the plastic they use at home, they put in this big bag and they pay someone to recycle it. So, there are steps we can take, but it's a very difficult world. For example, let's say you go to some natural food store that with almost like cosmic hypocrisy claims to care about the environment even though they sell beef or something. Just like, this little shameless hypocrisy. Let's say you go there and you buy, fruits or vegetables, but you're helping to keep in business a company that is actively supporting the meat industry. You're helping to keep them in business. So Prabhupada therefore tend to be a little stoic on this point, and I think obviously if you're working for a company that manages 12 slaughterhouses, you need to change your job. But if it's just kind of like the routine, ordinary, shameless hypocrisy and world destructive actions, yes.
I have two questions. My first one is, in our service that we do, whatever level, whatever service we might, do in the temple, in preaching activity, or even just general to each other. Sometimes we go through bad experiences, or we go through we receive negativity from others, and most of the time, when we try to speak to someone about it, they're resigned to purification. Could you?
The P word. So, this devotee said that sometimes in a temple environment or among devotees, people act inappropriately and then just tell us that, well, you're becoming purified. Okay, first of all, yes, you are becoming purified. Secondly, that person is becoming contaminated. So therefore, we just have to be firmly aware that Krishna sees everything, he knows who's doing what, and that ultimately our goal is not to have people treat us this way or that way. Ultimately, our goal is to please Krishna. So if in that situation you please Krishna, then you've made lemonade out of a lemon, so to speak, which I'm probably the first person that ever used that expression. So remember, you heard it here first.
And my second question, some of us are quite young, and
I know we are. Okay, the question is that some of us are quite young.
I myself am 22, and I know many other young devotees around the country, and a lot of us have this issue where we feel like we lack this solid baseline to stand upon to progress spiritually, or sometimes we lack the inspiration to do what you would have done, what your godfathers would have done at our age.
Okay, let me repeat that. This devotee said that he's 22 years old, kind of ballpark my age. And so sometimes they feel that they lack, the devotees in that group lack the baseline, or another word to use, inspiration to do the kinds of things that we did. I would say that, we had a very powerful wind in our sails. If you're sailing and you put your sail up and there's a strong wind or not a strong wind, it's not about your boat, it's about the wind. And so what we see is that many devotees came to Prabhupada and they did amazing things, and many of them actually could not sustain their spiritual practice. So, at the same time, I think it's definitely our duty, Prabhupada, Krishna, to use whatever intelligence, ingenuity we have to try to find a way to present Krishna consciousness so that people in this country are attracted, inspired, and whether you are a very large mammal or a spiritual movement, if you don't adapt, you go extinct. And if you look at the history of Vaishnavism, it's not a history of everyone always dressing this way, or a history of everyone always cooking that way, no, it's a history of adaptation. It's a history of, first of all, you have to be intelligent enough to understand Rupa Goswami's distinction, chapter 6 of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, between general principles and details. Someone who can't make that distinction cannot be a spiritual scientist. So, like, if you claim to be a scientist, you can't distinguish between, let's say, alcohol and oxygen. You can't be a scientist. So, we don't change the basic principles. So, in the case of Prabhupada, he gave us certain regular principles in order us not to change them. Prabhupada gave us the philosophy and said, don't change it. He gave us an institutional framework and asked us to work within it. But as far as details, like how you dress and what kind of music and everything, of course, there is a standard, which is the mode of goodness of the Guna. So no, don't wear a bikini or a male bikini into the temple room, or don't do kind of crazy music. And there is such a thing, actually, as crazy music. And so, in other words, be in the mode of goodness. That's the standard Krishna gives. But find a way to reach people. If you think that details, superficial details, are basic principles, like God will only love you if you wear these kinds of clothes, which is obviously absurd, then you're not a spiritual scientist. Or if you think that basic principles are just details, like let's say not taking drugs and everything, that's just a detail. It's not just a detail. So there are certain basic principles that we should follow or aspire to follow. And then there are details. And there's a term used twice in the Bhagavatam, Deshakalavi Bhagavat. One who knows, Deshakalavi Bhagavat, the differences of place and time. And this quality, this intelligence, the first canto is attributed to Bhishma. It's glorified as being Deshakalavi Bhagavat. And again, in the fourth canto, Narada Muni is instructing Dhruva Maharaj. He tells him you should worship Krishna, but knowing differences of time and place. So we are in a particular place and time right now, those of us who live in America. Our job is to not try to create, like new Benares or new Delhi, try to rep. In fact, I had a senior preacher tell me, assure me, a very senior preacher, that according to the Bhagavatam, India, in its physical features, ethnic and physical features, is actually a mirror reflection of the spiritual world. It's very interesting because we would have guessed half the spiritual world is Muslim culture. Krishna consciousness is full of surprises. Anyway, and he even suggested, so the word is pratibimba. The word pratibimba in Sanskrit means reflection. Literally means counter image, pratibimba. And so I said, I don't think so. So then I looked it up in the Bhagavatam, and nothing like that is stated in the Bhagavatam. So we have to be able to make this distinction. We have to know what is a basic principle, what is a detail. And it is our task to find a way, just like there's so many people in this country, in every country, they want to be, rock and roll stars. Am I dating myself? Is there such a thing? Okay, they want to be a rock and roll star, they want to be, a political star. They have to find a way to reach the people. And of course, there's even a few of them who are not shameless hypocrites. And who actually want to keep their principles and at the same time, make it. That's the real challenge. Of course, it's a challenge just to follow our principles and everything, but the real challenge to us, so in a sense, I would say that those of us who were serving back in the 60s or 70s, in one sense, had it much easier. For one thing, the Western world, including America, was just completely enthralled with Indian mysticism. Everyone had to have a guru. The Beatles went to Rishikesh to find a guru. Everyone needed a guru. And so, and there was all this counterculture and hippie people and this and that. So we were just kind of preaching to the choir. And a certain percentage of those people joined. There's that old saying, a rising tide lifts all boats. And so what Krishna did, Krishna intervened in human history. Because there's really no other way to explain this madness for Indian mysticism, which had never occurred in the Western world before and never occurred since. So Krishna changed history, made everyone mad after Eastern and especially Indian mysticism. He also, as Prabhupada himself often said, he took a lot of past life devotees like Purva Janda Bhaktas. took a lot of past life devotees, just sprinkled them around the world, so when they heard the Sankirtan party, it sort of reported for duty. And Prabhupada also, well, and Krishna also sent Prabhupada, a great pure devotee. Prabhupada is still present for anyone that has eyes to see. But in a sense, you, people in your generation, you have to do the heavy lifting. You're not just sort of, skating around in a rink in which everyone already sort of inclined to what you're saying, at least the young people. You've actually got to do the hard work. You've got to really use your brains, use your intelligence, and figure out a way to reach people. Figure out a way to take Krishna consciousness. You have to discover the rationality of it, the reason of it. When I took sannyasa in 1972 at the very mature and experienced age of 23, I had the privilege of taking sannyasa several years before my brain fully formed, which was, because, neurologically speaking, not till you're 29 or so that, a man's brain, if it ever matures, it was around. Anyway, so I wrote Prabhupada a letter and said that I was going to travel and preach in the universities in America. And Prabhupada wrote back to me and kind of said in his language, the love of God, he said, do not present Krishna consciousness as just rules and regulations. It's the most sublime philosophy. We don't just follow rules. We start with an understanding of a super philosophy, of a most powerful spiritual tradition. And then, secondarily, we learn certain principles that will get us there. It's like, let's say, for example, someone wants to travel to Norway for some reason. Now, if you decide you want to go to Norway, then you start figuring out, how do I get there? How much does it cost? Am I going to take a plane? Am I going to take a cruise liner? Am I going to do this? Am I going to do that? How do I pay for it? Do I have to make a bank transfer? All the rules, all the technical points come after your decision that you want to go to Norway. Let's say you want to be a doctor. It's like grueling. Something almost masochistic about that program. If you want to be a doctor, you've got to take all these courses, and it's like. And so, why would you try to convince someone to go through all the austerity and difficulty of, being a pre-med, a medical student, and going through your residency and all this torture, if the person already says, but I don't want to be a doctor? So why in the world would you want to tell somebody about this or that rule if they don't want to be Krishna conscious? So what Prabhupada was telling me is, we have to convince people that it is absolutely in your rational self-interest to become Krishna conscious. We have to understand that rationally. Not just, well, we believe it, and if you don't do it, you're a bad person. And we have all kinds of names we can call you, the least of them being karmi, and the worst being things like demon and asura. So, let me throw the cave on. So in that sense, all of you really have, you got to do the real work. And that is figure out how, first of all, you have to figure out how Krishna consciousness is a science. And then once you understand that, you have to communicate that. Just like sometimes advanced scientists, they teach undergraduate classes because they notice that often undergraduate science classes are just not well taught. So that's the task of your generation. Understand Krishna consciousness as the spiritual science, which it is, and then how to communicate that, how to persuade people in relevant ways. I think your job is more difficult, and Krishna has given you more, let's say, material, I don't know if you call it street cred. Krishna has given you these advantages because your task is harder. So, if there are no other questions, yes.
I was asking Manoj, see, in ISKCON nowadays, there's a competition between
Okay, let me repeat that for our viewing audience. I mean, people out there in these various media platforms should really appreciate that there are no commercials. This is not like free YouTube. So, I suppose we should have commercials and say, you want to hear me without commercials? So, the question was, or the beginning of the question was that there seems to be some kind of competition between devotees who are intellectuals and those who are coming from a less intellectual background.
But in the Quran we find it says Bhakta Pratishthitam, and also it says Namedhayana Bahuna, means the Quran is saying by your intelligence, by your sophisticated knowledge, by your own endeavor, you cannot achieve God.
Okay, let me repeat that. There's a statement in Shastra Tarko Pratishthan. I'll translate that for, there may be one or two of you who don't know Sanskrit. So Tarka in Sanskrit means logic, reason, and Pratishta means foundation. So Apratishta means logic is not the foundation. What was the other quote you gave?
That's why I said that Namedhayana, by your intelligence.
Yeah, Medhaya, actually.
Namedhayana.
Yes, so anyway, now, yes, but what is that referring to? That you have to understand. The Shastra is saying that by logic, by intelligence, there is something you cannot do. What is that something?
The something is, if you want to achieve Krishna, then the only way is that service. It says, Sevanungai Devado.
Yes, however, that means that logic does not bring me to Krishna. However, logic definitely helps me to understand. For example, you see, there's another side which you didn't mention. I'm not trying to understand God by logic. I actually, when I was 20 years old, I was home for the summer from Berkeley, and I bought a little blue, Bhagavad Gita at the local Los Angeles temple, which was on Los Angeles Boulevard there. And by reading that book, by chanting Hare Krishna, I became convinced that Krishna is God. Now, I didn't become convinced just by logic splitting or by all. However, once I understood that, then to come to a clear understanding of what that means that Krishna is God and how to explain it by others, I very much use intelligence, because here's a verse you didn't quote. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Tesham is 10:10. Tesham, for them, for those people, Tesham, Sadata Jutana, we're always engaged in Bhakti Yoga, Bhajatam Priti Purvaka, and serving, worshiping with love. The Dhammi, Krishna says, I give them something by which they can come to me. I give them something by which they come to me. What does Krishna give them? The practice of spiritual rationality. Krishna says, Dadami Buddhi Yogantam. He doesn't even say they're Dadami Bhakti Yogantam. He doesn't even say I give them Bhakti Yoga. He says I give them Buddhi Yoga. And Buddhi is a Sanskrit word which means intelligence, reason, logic, analysis. And so Krishna says that. He says in Bhagavad Gita that Aham Sarvasya. Wrong verse. That Sarvasya Chaham Hridisam Vivishtam Matak Smritir Jnanam, for me come knowledge. Remember, so Krishna, if you look, what you need to do, and it's infomercial alert. In the book I wrote, the Guide to Bhagavad Gita, I trace, among many other things, all the places in the Gita where Krishna uses the word buddhi, intelligence, and he uses it a lot. Intelligence, rational, analytic intelligence. For example, Chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada titled as the contents of the Gita summarized. So therefore, this large chapter 2 of the Gita basically, summarizes the entire Gita. Now, this chapter pivots on verse 39. Because in Bhagavad Gita 2:39, Krishna says that everything I told you so far is this, and And now everything else in this chapter is that. So Krishna says, Esha teya vihita sankye buddhi yoge tuimamchayo. So what I've told you so far is buddhi. I've explained to you buddhi, rational intelligence in Krishna consciousness, but Krishna says I've explained to you buddhi, sankhya, philosophically. And he says, yoge tuimamchayo, now here, as I explained it, in practice. So Krishna introduces these two terms, sankhya and yoga, which means philosophical, analytic understanding, and yoga, which means practice. And then in chapter 5, Krishna says, sankhya yoga prata bala prabhadanti napandita. Those who are childish, those who are literally bala, those who are childish, think that sankhya, philosophical understanding, and yoga, practice, are different. The childish, the immature think that. Ekavapyasti tat samyak, one who practices well, very nicely, one of these, ubayor vindate balam, achieves the fruit of both. And so therefore, and Prabhupada himself says this, in his famous statement, which he repeatedly makes. Prabhupada says that religion without philosophy is simply sentimentalism or fanaticism. You need both. And some people falsely think that to combine the religion or the spirituality of Krishna consciousness with philosophy simply means to practice bhakti yoga and to know the philosophy. In other words, to memorize a doctrine. But actually, if you look at the way Prabhupada explains these things, what he actually means is, you have to know how to do philosophy.
How do you say when God says, not taken them out only in South India, when he meant Brahmana, you are not educated, you are not intelligent, but because you are looking at the pictures of Krishna's being a charioteer of Arjuna.
Yes.
And when Mahaprabhu heard that, he addressed them and said, you understood the.
Yes, however, that's what Krishna says in the Gita. Because this Brahmin mastered the devoted practice, he got the result of the understanding. But Lord Chaitanya did not tell Rupa Goswami or Sanatana Goswami, throw away all your learning, just think of me and cry. Actually, the followers of Lord Chaitanya are famous for being great intellectuals, for writing great books, for engaging in extraordinary analytic studies of Bhakti Yoga. Just as Lord Chaitanya didn't tell that humble but devoted Brahmin, you need to go to college. He didn't tell Rupa and Sanatana, you need to go to South India, throw away all your books, forget all your learning, and just go to South India and cry with that illiterate Brahmin. And the simple fact is, as Prabhupada himself explained so many times, if this movement is going to be successful, we need to attract the intelligent people. That Brahmin, that illiterate Brahmin was a great devotee, but how many intelligent people did he bring to Krishna consciousness? And Prabhupada, who understood obvious sociology and socio-historical dynamics, knew, as he said many times, that unless we can somehow persuade and attract educated, intelligent people, this movement will not make it. So therefore, discouraging intelligence, discouraging serious philosophy, discouraging erudition is not at all what Prabhupada did. He did the opposite. Prabhupada's first instruction to me was, stay in school, get a good education. Prabhupada did not say to me, forget your university education, just read my books. He said, you need this other education. So basically, there's a problem, I think, among devotees, that those who are not educated don't want someone to be more educated than them. And so there's a tendency to, I'm not saying you, I know you're playing the devil's advocate, keyword devil. So, that's a basic socio-historical reality. As Prabhupada said many times, Prabhupada often told me, when he wrote letters to me, you can read it in the database, that it's very good you're presenting Krishna consciousness in universities, because he said we need to attract the intelligent class. He said this constantly. He said that if his disciples could get PhDs, including the women, by the way, he specifically said including the women, if his disciples could get PhDs and teach our philosophy in the universities, he said that would save America and change the world. He didn't just say everybody just, sit down and cry. He said that if we could teach in universities, get PhDs, that would change the world. So, yeah, we have to look at the whole picture. And logic doesn't mean, actually, just to finish off this little discussion, Prabhupada wrote me a letter once, 1971, when I was a Grihasta. Honk if you like Grihastas. So I was a Grihasta in 1971, and president of Gainesville, just down the road. And Prabhupada wrote me a letter in which he said, it's kind of, his jargon, he says there is philosophical speculation and there's mental speculation. Prabhupada gave the example, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Rasoha Matsu Konteya, I'm the taste of water. He said, now, if you speculate, is that true or not? Is that true or not? That's mental speculation. If you accept, yes, Krishna's the taste of water, but what the heck does that mean? What does it mean that Krishna's the taste of water? He said that's philosophical speculation, and we do that. So what I'm recommending here, and thank you for bringing this up, to clarify, what I'm recommending here is that we desperately need devotees who not only know the philosophy, but actually know philosophy. And when Prabhupada said we need to combine religion and philosophy, he didn't just mean religion and the philosophy, he meant religion and philosophy. And we engage in philosophical speculation all the merry day. And the result is, I can't tell you how many letters I've gotten. I mean, a lot of letters. People saying that I came back to Krishna consciousness because I felt I was given a way to be a devotee without checking in my brain at the door. So, anyway, that's a brief response. Boy. Okay, maybe we'll go in order, you, and then, yes.
Maharaj, with this idea of philosophical angles, we're going to have angles.
Philosophical angles, yes.
And that's where we can get into, if we're attached to our angle, and then you get a bunch of people and devotees, and then you get factions.
Okay, as far as factions and angles, yeah.
Family.
I think that, first of all, I don't think that I'm a better devotee than someone else because I do this kind of philosophical stuff. It's just what I do. I mean, if I had a flat tire and a devotee came along and could fix my tire, I'd give 100 pounds of philosophy for that devotee to fix my tire. So, it's not a question of factions. It's a question of using our intelligence in Krishna service. To say that we shouldn't study is absurd. It's just like, look at Ramanujacharya. He's, of course, before Lord Chaitanya. He was a genius. He was a philosophical genius. He wrote this incredible commentary on Vedanta Sutra, Baladev Vidyabhushan. If anything distinguishes the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, if you look at the time of Lord Chaitanya, it's their great erudition. They were great scholars. The 6 Goswamis were all great scholars. Lord Chaitanya's most intimate followers were great scholars, academics. So the idea that, we shouldn't do that kind of service is simply absurd. And it's not a question of factions. But for example, if I hear somebody say, like, claiming to be a devotee, that, we're beyond Bhagavad Gita and we don't follow what Bhagavad Gita says because Krishna can be unfair, I feel it's my duty to clarify that so that people don't get bewildered by this nonsense.
But I'm saying about like how you may be right, and they may be right, and they may be right.
But it's not a question of, trying to be right. It's a question of trying to spread the Krishna consciousness movement. I don't have time just to argue with devotees all day. I'm trying to serve Prabhupada.
Exactly. How we can do it.
So I don't see, it's like they say, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So I'm not sure what's broken. In other words, I don't see some major problem, some forest fire in ISKCON of faction. So if it's not broken, don't fix it. Yes.
If you don't mind, I just want to share one verse that kind of relates to what you're talking about.
Okay, maybe you have to use the microphone. Maybe we won't show your handsome face, but just the microphone.
I think it's probably louder. I got a big voice.
A little closer.
No, this verse is from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, chapter Adi Lila, chapter 8, text 15. It's one of my favorite verses because it relates to the logic and the importance of it. If you are indeed interested in logic and argument, kindly apply them to the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. If you do so, you will find such mercy strikingly wonderful. And then another point is, there's a quote, and I can't think of the exact location, it's in Chaitanya Charitamrita. As Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, devotees are like scientists. They do their research individually, and he says, like in academic circles, they come together and discuss what they realize. Because as you said, the Dhammi Buddhi Yogam, based on Tesam Satata Yuktana, what service you've done, and Krishna rewards according to that understanding. So like scientists, we don't condemn each other. We share our realizations in a safe environment and then try to enhance each other's understanding.
Yes, very good. Excellent points. Excellent verses. So, Prabhupada, by the way, did say that he came to the West and in general started his country to reestablish an authentic Brahman order in the world. So how can we say that Brahman shouldn't be learned? That's what distinguishes. It's like Vidya, Vinaya, something. Anyway. So, anything else? Parampara, Prabhu.
You mentioned being a householder and a president.
I mentioned being a householder
and being the president of the Gainesville Temple.
Yes.
And you're on your way to Gainesville because in several days there's going to be a festival.
50th
You
anniversary.
mind promoting that and letting the devotees know
Yeah,
what's going
on
on?
July 29th, it's the 50th anniversary of Prabhupada's visit to Gainesville. 50th anniversary. I was the Grihastha Temple president there. And so
Prabhupada spent the night there, right?
he spent the night there with us, and he stayed up after midnight preaching and dishing for devotees.
Wow.
So we're going to talk about all the wonderful things Prabhupada did and all the wonderful devotees, such as my former wife, and Amarendra, Dear Krishna Maharaj, who was a new brahmachari then. And so we're going to be talking about that. I mean, the festival in Gainesville will be mostly talking about Prabhupada. There will not be an Abhishek or a fire yoga. But we do plan to talk a lot about Prabhupada.
That's Thursday, coming up on Thursday.
This Thursday, yes.
Thursday the 29th.
Yes.
It'll be broadcast, right?
Yes. Yes.
Put together a book about your experiences with Prabhupada and your history.
Thank you. Put together a book about my experiences with Prabhupada. Yeah, I hope I'll get to live long enough to do that. But thank you. So that's all. Any other last points? Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna.
Jai!
Thanks, everybody.
So, Hare Krishna. We would once again like to thank Hridayananda Swami Maharaj for this amazing session today. It's always enlightening to hear from you, and we hope that we can have more chances to hear from you. Once again, Maharaj, thank you so much. So, we welcome everyone to our Sunday program. This has been one of our first Sunday programs where we had a live class here. So, now, as all of you know, most of our programs have been virtual, and we have the series going on Krishna and Balaram, which will be continued on the virtual platform. Next Sunday, we'll again have another session, which for which the details you can find on our Facebook page. It's streamed live on our Facebook page. The Zoom link is there as well. So if you want to join on Zoom, and we are having Kirtan every Sunday at the temple. So you all are welcome. Now we'll be having Kirtan until darshan closes. So you're all welcome to stay and have a wonderful time in the Kirtan. So I would encourage everyone to stay. We'll have Aarti at 6:30. And a few other announcements. We have some major festivals. We have Janmashtami, we have Balaram Purnima coming up next month. So we have Balaram Purnima on 22nd August and then Janmashtami on the 30th. So we have a big festival. There are different ways you can participate. We'll have all the updates coming up soon on all our social platforms. So you can follow us there. And we will get started with Kirtan. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.